All right, everybody, welcome into the first of many Fantrax Football Fridays. Obviously, the 2023 season has come to a close. We saw the Super Bowl last weekend. Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, our prayers go out to everyone that was at that parade and affected by, obviously, the tragedy that went on there. We hope everyone's doing well after that, a couple days in the wake of that. But we are here to turn the page to the 2024 season. My name is Colin McTamaney of Fantrax. I will be here every Friday of the offseason talking football, bringing on guests like my first one today. And we're just going to dive into topics that are relevant, breaking news, whatever is going to give you the edge for next fantasy football season, as well as your dynasty leagues. So my first guest here today, Aaron St. Denis. Aaron, why don't you introduce yourself, let people know where they can find your work, and we'll get right into our conversation.
Wait, we're here to talk football? I prepared to talk WWE.
Yeah, or Caitlin Clark from last night, Iowa basketball, baby.
I don't know anything about women's college basketball, but I knew who that was because I seen the highlights all night on Twitter. But anyways, thank you very much for having me. As you said, I'm Aaron St. Denis. We don't have all that long, so I won't list everywhere I work because it's literally everywhere. Redraft at player profiler, dynasty at DLF, IDP at IDP, guys. I do some writing for Fantasy Pros. I have my own site, the Fantasy Football Universe, and I also am working as the content director, I guess you would say, at the Fantasy Football Advice Network, who is sponsoring the expo for any of you who are going.
Yeah, I'm hoping to make a return to the expo. That looks great.
Yeah, I went last year for the first time, and it was awesome. But this year, it's going to be a little more work and a little less play since the company's sponsoring it. So, like I said, it's a lot of places. I named half them, so I'm everywhere.
That's awesome, man. So obviously we want to talk about rookies. They're all the buzz right now. They're all over social media. Everyone's trying to speculate. Everyone's trying to get their early little flag plants out there, find the next Puka Nacua perhaps. Last year's NFL draft seemed like it was a fantasy-friendly draft. We had Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson going early. Then we had that run of wide receivers in the first round. Dalton Kincaid even made his way into the first round. This year's draft seems like it's going to be even more fantasy friendly, wouldn't you say? I mean, we already have this buzz about quarterback going 1, 2, 3 again, and then tons of wide receivers, including Marvin Harrison Jr., who is perhaps the best prospect we've seen in a long time, even with guys like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase recently entering the league. Let's go through this NFL draft and talk about the first round real quick with some of these bigger names. Everyone knows them, but I want to try to gauge and see what this first round is going to look like. Someone who's dived into this like rookie class already, how many first round quarterbacks do you expect to go?
Good God. I've done a couple of over at Mock Draft Database. I did one or two of the mock drafts, just the first round. And I've gone through them. I'm going, wait, I have to try and include more like non-fantasy players because I'll get like 15 players in and I'm going, oh, I haven't drafted a non-fantasy. It's just, it's going to be, I think it could be chaotic. Like there's a good stretch. Quarterback, you could see 3 of the first 3 or 4 picks be quarterbacks there. I hope they're not because I want to see Sam Howell, but you could see 3 right away. And every day I get higher and higher on JJ McCarthy. I think he could go as high as 8. So
wow,
like you could see probably, I think 4 will go in the first round. You might see 4 in the top 12 and then not anymore. But I don't think it'll be more than 4, but it'll either be 3 or 4 is what I think.
Yeah, obviously this discussion is really, really early. We haven't even had the combine yet. Free agency will happen. We'll get a little bit more answers when that happens there. But it does seem like this quarterback class is one of the best ones in a while. Talking about wide receivers, though, again, this class seems like it might be the best of all time. There's so many names. It goes so deep, especially if you play in a Superflex Dynasty League. If you have a second-round pick or a multitude of second-round picks, you're going to come away with some good players. How many first-round wide receivers do you think are going to go in the NFL draft?
That's where it gets messy. There are, I think, 4. We've got, off the top of my head, Marvin Harrison, Odunze, Franklin, and who's number 2 that I'm missing? Neighbors. I think those are pretty much consensus. And I see a lot of those go in the top 10 to 12 picks there. But between them and quarterbacks, you got to throw Brock Bowers in there as maybe 5 to the Chargers. But we have a spot where they're saying there's a ton of receivers, but once you get to about 10 or 12 where the Jets pick, if they don't go in the top 12, there's going to be, I think, a gap between picks 10 and maybe 22, where it's all tackles and defensive players, because none of those teams really need the wide receivers. So you could see probably 3 of those 4 that I named go in the top 10 to top 12. One of them will probably fall into the 20s. And then the problem becomes projecting the second tier. The second tier of receivers, it's like, what we got? Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas Jr., Keon Coleman, Devontae Walker, who's fallen a lot because of the Senior Bowl, Corley, Leggett,
McConkey.
But so there's a second tier there of about 6 players where somebody could, 2 or 3 of them could sneak into the first round, but I think for sure you're going to see 4. I think you'll see 3 of them go early, 1 in the back end of the first round, and then we'll probably mix in, maybe there'll be a surprise of whoever they like if someone falls in love with McConkey or one of the Texas receivers, they'll probably go. So I would say 5 is probably a safe bet, but I think we're going to have a big dry spell there right in the middle of the first round where you see a ton of receivers, quarterbacks, the tight end go off the board, and then it dries up till the 20s.
Well, you already mentioned Brock Bowers. Speaking of tight end, do you think he's going to be the only first round tight end in the NFL draft?
Yeah.
Would you say that's safe? Yeah, safe bet. So how high do you think a Brock Bowers could go? Is he a top 10, top 15? What are you thinking?
I have him 5 to the Chargers.
Wow.
I think is it 5, 6?
Yeah,
the Chargers at 5 or 6.
Giants
5.
are 6. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's 5. Yep. That's where I have him 5.
Yeah. So, we've already gone through quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end, just talking fantasy football here. And you've got, roughly 4 quarterbacks, roughly 5 wide receivers, and then Brock Bowers. That's a third of NFL teams taking a fantasy relevant player in the NFL draft first round. Yeah. Pretty incredible. And I feel like those projections are modest. I mean, we could even see a couple players sneak in. Obviously, for people that don't know, you draft a first round player, you're going to get that 5th-year option out of them on their rookie contract. So we might see teams trade back into the back end of the first round and taking advantage of that, as far as maybe a Michael Penix later in the first round, or some of those wide receivers you mentioned there, Aaron. Running back. If you're a dynasty manager that needs a running back, is this a good draft, bad draft, okay draft? What are we looking at here?
If you have a first round pick and need a running back, you should trade the pick for a veteran. I seen your original show sheet and I said first round running back. If I had to bet there will be a first round running back or no running back taken on day 1 or 2, give me the day 1 or 2. I'm sure inevitably one of the group of 6 there of, what is it? Irving, Estime, Corum, Brooks, Allen, and there's one more I'm forgetting, but one of that group, maybe even 2, will get day 2 capital or a good landing spot, but none of them I don't think could come anywhere close to the first round. Excuse me. Winter weather here. I wouldn't be surprised if, that none of them got picked in the first 2 rounds and the first one went off the board in the 3rd round. I don't think any of them really, sorry. I don't think any of them really set themselves apart. And the 2 that I liked best in Brooks and Benson have passed like serious health concerns. So that's the problem. And the ones that are healthy, I don't think are all that great. Like, I'm a Michigan fan, so I love Blake Corum, but I don't know if his skill set transitions to the NFL, but it looks like he's going to go first. I would say late 2nd round is where I would expect a running back to go.
Yeah, it's going to be a very difficult. I know I have a couple teams that desperately need running back. It feels like every dynasty team desperately needs a running back, but a guy like Blake Corum, I feel like could end up, maybe reuniting with Jim Harbaugh in LA on the Chargers, just, if they need to replace an Austin Eckler there or so. We have this quarterback debate here. We have Caleb Williams probably going number 1, wouldn't you say? Is that a safe bet on your end? Okay.
Well,
so then
you're talking 1 in fantasy drafts or 1 in the draft, the NFL draft?
Talking NFL draft here. Yeah. It's tough, right?
I have
February 16th. What's your guess?
He's going 1 or 2. I don't know. He's got to go 1 because if the Bears don't pick him.
Sorry, here my dog is popped in here and just moved my computer.
I was like, wow, he got the real cool panoramic going there.
No, not at all. I have a torn ACL dog here. Moved my computer.
Is the dog on the IR? Did you have to IR the dog?
Yeah, he'll be ready for training camp though.
Okay,
yeah,
that's all that matters. Is that a dynasty faller for? Anyways, we've gotten sidetracked.
Sleeper pick. Yeah.
If the Bears don't take him at 101, you have to assume they're trading the pick to someone who wants a quarterback. So long answer, yeah, he's probably your 101, but Either way, it's 101 or 102.
So the biggest discussion there, and I know you mentioned Sam Howell here earlier in the show talking Washington Commanders. Let's just say they do decide to go for a quarterback here and your dreams are a little crushed. Who do you think the Commanders will go for at number 2?
It has to be Jaden Daniels. He, for me, is the easy quarterback 2 in this class. I'm not a huge Drake May fan, and you'll see I don't even have him as my 3. I think he's going to go. I'm sure that's your next question. I think the Patriots, if it goes quarterback, they will take him at 3. He's not who I would take at 3. JJ McCarthy is.
Yeah, interesting. I feel like JJ McCarthy has been a recent riser, especially on the internet. People are starting to, whisper a little bit that he's maybe going to sneak into the top 12 here in the NFL draft. But wide receivers, I know you mentioned, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, some other guys here. Who are guys that could go on day 2, day 3 that you think people should be targeting in their dynasty drafts, if they fall to the second round of their dynasty drafts or so?
That's going to be pretty, like I said, I expect 4 probably receivers to go in the first round, and that's your tier 1. So the Marvin Harrison, Neighbors, Odunze, and Franklin, that's your tier 1. The rest are all going to go somewhere. I would assume there's going to be a huge run, I think, in the second round, because I know everyone's saying there could be a ton of receivers taken at the end of the round. We say this every year. We project every wide receiver to go to KC, Buffalo, Baltimore, and they never do it. They take one in the second, and that's what you're going to see. The second tier of wide receivers of Brian Thomas Jr. is really good. Keon Coleman, the 2 Texas guys in Worthy and Mitchell, Corley, McConkey. I think every single one of those goes in the second round. Then you might see, depending on if they can rebound, guys like Walker and Leggett, who really cratered at the Senior Bowl, and the 2 Washington receivers, Polk and McMillan. I think all of them could get in there. And then the NFL loves to overdraft the legacy guys. You might see Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's kid, get in there. Who else do we have? We have the big guy, Johnny Wilson. He's huge. He's like 6'7". He might. You
think he's a wide receiver or a tight end classification?
I think he's I think he's going to fight to be classified as a wide receiver. Hey, I don't know what he'll be drafted as. And then Roman Wilson was a huge riser at the Senior Bowl, so he could get in there. Their day 2 is going to see a ton of receivers, and that's going to determine that large group outside the top 4, that group of maybe 10 to 12 receivers. That's going to determine which ones get slotted into the second round or second tier of wide receivers and goes at the end of the first round of rookie drafts, and which are going to fall into 3rd and 4th, because they're all, like, if you look at them, they all have pretty much the same profile. Big, fast guy, not great route runner. It's like 10 of the same receiver, and then Ladd McConkey, who profiles as like a Julian Edelman Patriot
slot. Yeah, it feels like this receiver class. I mean, it doesn't feel like it. It's just simple fact that they are much larger than last year's receiver class. Obviously, we had Tank Dell notably coming out, and everyone thought he's too small to play, and he obviously exploded onto the scene as a rookie.
Well, that's another one. Jacob Cohen, everyone's giving him the Tank Dell comp all of a sudden. He's going to fly off the board in rookie drafts. But I know you said it was everyone's saying the deepest receiver class in years. I don't know if that's true. We have 4 really big studs. It may be deep. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good deep, because you've got 10 guys there in that second tier. I think half of them are going to be busts at least. So,
yeah, and I think one thing I'm taking away from this conversation is that there's a lot of talent early on in the draft, and we have a lot of, like you said, there's going to be a run of tackles or so in the middle of the first round. We have teams like the Chargers, like the Giants, that need offensive line help, but we would love to get weapons on those teams as well. Specifically for Justin Herbert, you might see the Chargers fan base, especially with Jim Harbaugh, get a little upset if they don't take Malik Neighbors at 5 or so, or Brock Bowers, like you mentioned, but they need offensive line help.
Exactly.
Sounds like early in the second round, day 2, maybe there will be some wide receivers. There definitely will be wide receivers left for them to pluck out of this draft here.
Well, that's the other problem why I don't think as many receivers are going to go. Like, I've done these mock drafts, and like I said, I hate to force myself to start taking non-skill players, but that's what's going to happen. You're going to see teams where they wanted a receiver, but the defensive tackle or an offensive lineman that they needed, that they thought would be gone at 5, made it to 15, and they're like, oh, I can't pass on the value. And you're going to start to see a gap there. And some teams that maybe receiver was their number 1 need, they're going to pass because the value at the other position was way better. So,
right. All right. Last but not least, we talked about Brock Bowers already. last year's NFL draft, we saw a lot of tight ends go early, and then we saw them perform in their rookie seasons as well. Obviously, we had Sam Laporta broke onto the scene, plenty of others out there. This year, we got Brock Bowers. Anyone else beyond that, do you expect to have a rookie season worthwhile for fantasy football in 2024? Or are there guys that you like to stash on your dynasty teams that you can kind of get a feel for, early on? It's February 16th, of course.
I don't know if there's necessarily a breakout. I like the class. I have no interest in Bowers in the first round. I'm not drafting a rookie tight end, or a tight end with a rookie first round pick. We've seen it with Pitts, and everyone says, "Oh, well." I always say they don't hit in their first year. Oh, well, Sam Laporta did. Sam Laporta wasn't a first round pick.
Right.
Sam Laporta wasn't the first guy off the board. So I don't want to do it. Give me the quarterback or the wide receiver in that range. So I'm going to have no shares of Bowers. Who I do have a lot of is at the end of the second round. I like Jatavian Sanders a lot. I like Ben Sinnott a lot. They're both very good. They might even be available in the third rounds. Sorry, dealing with something here.
You're good, man.
We also have, I don't mind Cade Stover or, excuse me, I'm dying here. Jaheim Bell out of Florida State are also pretty good. So I think it's not necessarily the most high-end class, but I think there is some depth. And I think that's part of what I've seen in rookie drafts-wise. Jatavian Sanders was a consensus tight end too and was going at the beginning of the second round. As we've seen that Bell and Sanders and Stover have kind of emerged a bit, they're falling, and you can get the second tight end late in the second round. And that's where I prefer. Like even two years ago, I had tons of Trey McBride the second round. And I would rather have those Trey McBride shares in the second round than Kyle Pitts or Sam Laporta. Well, Sam Laporta was the second, but it's a decent class. There's 4 or 5 with solid potential, but I don't think any of them really break out in year one unless they get a great landing spot.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important as the landing spot, especially for the tight end position, even the running back position, as you mentioned, for this class too, is where are those players going to go? I think we have some obvious talent at quarterback, obvious talent at wide receiver, but my takeaway for the other 2 positions is where are they going to go? I don't think we should be so jaded by this past season's rookie tight end class to think that all of a sudden rookie tight ends are going to be a thing. I think the tight end position is fine for 2024 because of this past rookie class, but this has not set the new precedent that rookie tight ends are all of a sudden fantasy relevant.
Yeah.
Aaron, I really appreciate you coming on here today. Again, our first Fantrax Football Friday of the offseason. Coming here every Friday. I'll have new guests on. Thank you for being our debut inaugural guest here. I appreciate you taking the time. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. You can catch me, Colin McTammany, every Friday on the Fantrax social network, talking with guests, talking football, giving you an edge for next fantasy football season as well as your dynasty seasons. Take it easy out there. Enjoy the offseason. Plenty left to go. Obviously, the combine coming up here in a few weeks. We've got free agency next month and then the draft followed up by that. Plenty left to talk about. We'll see you next time here on the Fantrax social network.
Thanks for having me.